G'day guys, Mike with the Outer Circle, and in this episode of Getting Started in the Horus Heresy, the White Scars. Now the White Scars are a very difficult legion to play well. To start with, well, let's just go straight into their rules. So swift of action, you're going to add +1 inches to your movement. This is going to affect all models in the army, whether it's infantry, whether it's cavalry. This is a good ability that is highly underrated. But, of course, the two stats that you need buffed the least are generally initiative and movement speed. The stats people want to see buffed are generally weapon skill, strength, toughness, wounds, attacks, and leadership, and ideally saves. So, adding to the movement doesn't seem very strong at first, and obviously for most people, compared to the previous iteration of the game, this is quite the downgrade. But it is very strong, however, it requires a very high skill ceiling in order to really play it to the best of its abilities. So, for instance, let's pretend you have this idealistic situation of a mirror match. Two tactical squads are versing one another, a different legion and this legion. If the other legion has units which, let's say tactical marines on both sides, they want to get in range, shoot you with their bolt guns, you want to get in range, shoot them with yours. Well, ideally, you want to sit 32 inches away from them. Why is that? Well, at 32 inches, you have the edge. And the reason you have the edge is because they cannot hit you at that distance. They can move 7 inches forward. Once they add their 24 inches of range, they're only hitting at 31 inches. You are safe from them. However, at 32 inches, they're within your attack threshold. You can move forward and you're 1 inch inside the range of them when you shoot at them with your own attacks. That means you have the tactical advantage here, because you have movement and you have maneuver on your side. Now, this is a very hard thing to pull off to its maximum. It does mean you're going to cross the table faster. Basic infantry being able to move 8 inches compared to 6 inches in the previous edition, by the third turn of the game, you've moved as far already as you would have moved in 4 turns in the previous edition of Horus Heresy. So this is actually vitally important, but of course, the strength in this power entirely relies on you being able to put your units in advantageous situations to begin with. Because if the enemy is able to bring more powerful units than yours, then 1 inch of movement isn't going to make the difference. What will make the difference is being able to use your movement efficiently and correctly, and that's why there's an incredibly high skill ceiling here. Otherwise, if you just play them and you don't use this +1 inches to the maximum benefit available to you, the Legion is going to feel incredibly underwhelming and underpowered. Now, the White Scars are one of the few armies I've been able to test out, and I've found them to be quite good up until the point where the enemy has just superior firepower to the extreme. For example, Nemesis bolt guns spammed. Because the range is so great, it doesn't matter what your movement value is, there's very little you can do to mitigate the damage of those weapons. That is a limitation of the system that would affect any army, not just White Scars, however, so it's unfair to hold them to that standard. The other half of swift action is when you are rolling for the first turn and seize the initiative, you roll 2d6 and you discard the lowest roll. Can be good, can be bad. I kind of wish it was a choice for the player, giving you the strategic initiative versus forcing your hand to potentially go first. It's not necessarily what you want. Anyway, going on from there, we're going to look at the Legion reaction now, which is called Chasing the Wind. And this is another very tactical movement advantage, and it definitely does have some huge advantages. And it's when an enemy unit moves within 12 inches of your unit, you may move your own unit, and you get to use jump moves, but you will suffer penalties. So, difficult terrain, that kind of thing. Now, there are ways of mitigating this, of course, but I think the best situation for the use of Chasing the Wind is probably going to be for a vehicle. Let's just say your vehicle is shooting the crap out of the enemy and you don't want to move it too far in your turn because it's going to lower the ballistic skill or force snapshots on a lot of the weapons on the vehicle. Well, that's okay, because you can sit there, shoot the crap out of them, and then when they go to assault you in their turn, just back it up, use your advanced reaction. That's the sort of thing you want to be doing here. That's how Chasing the Wind will work best. You can also use it to be aggressive with your unit, but if it's in the enemy's own movement phase, they're not going to move, say, I don't know, a Legion las cannon squad towards your Terminators, giving you the tactical advantage to move your Terminators forward. That's not how it works. They're going to be moving things like their Terminators towards your las cannons, so you use this to move your las cannons the hell away from those Terminators. That's the way to use this advanced reaction. Not terrible, not great. Now we reach the usual Warlord traits, and of course, like all the other Legions, you get 3. Now, these 3 traits are... one is questionable, one is probably awful and awfully requires certain criteria, and one is fantastic, one of the best Warlord traits in the game. And that is this one, Heroes Never Die. It's a Loyalist-only Warlord trait. The Warlord and his unit becomes stubborn. That's solid. But here's the thing, if the Warlord is killed, all friendly models who can draw line of sight to the Warlord at the moment he died get Fearless. That is huge, because morale is just crushing and punishing in this edition of the Horus Heresy. It is tempting almost to take a terrible model as your Warlord. Take a Legion Centurion, just a stock Centurion, throw him out the front, waving a big red flag at the enemy, shoot me, and then get them to kill this 50-point model, and then buff the crap out of the rest of your army with army-wide Fearless. Because who cares about getting an extra assault reaction, really, from having the Warlord still alive on the table, when your whole army can be going, we don't care that you're shelling us, shooting us, charging us, whatever, we're going to hang around the entire game. That is a fantastic Warlord trait. And frankly, that in conjunction with the Legion trait actually works really well together, because you're never going to be pinned, you're never going to be missing out on that movement bonus, whereas you can pin the enemy. You can hamper their efforts in many different ways in this game. I really rate Heroes Never Die. Strong Warlord trait. The next one is Born to the Saddle. Cavalry ignore difficult terrain penalties, and you get a 4+ invulnerable save against dangerous terrain. You also get an additional movement reaction. Now, I say this is underwhelming because cavalry suck. They are not good in this edition of Horus Heresy, and the main cavalry this is obviously going to affect is going to be bikes, jet bikes, and land speeders. And, well, invulnerable saves against dangerous terrain are not going to be a super common thing for you. What's going to be a greater problem for your cavalry is the fact that, well, they're not bulky, and when they get assaulted by things with jump packs and such, like, say, Night Lords, you're probably going to be outnumbered very easily, and therefore you are always going to be suffering from the fact that you are having less models or less model equivalents in your units. And things like las cannons, missile launchers, things that bikes were immune to instant death from in the last edition, so you would still get, feel no pain, things like that. Yeah, well, guess what? They suffer from those things. Both missile launchers and las cannons, which are very common now. There's a proliferation of Spartans at the moment in the battlefield. Melters and multi-melters got a lot better, so you're seeing a lot more of those on the battlefield. Things got cheaper in many cases. There's a lot of Strength 8 AP3 out there. Bikes will just die in droves. And of course, speeders with, toughness 7, 4 wounds on the larger speeders, they just crumple like wet paper in a hurricane. It's not great. So this Warlord trait, in theory, in maybe the previous edition, solid Warlord trait. In this edition, though, it is not very good because the units it affects are not very good. There are exceptions to this, but is it worth taking this Warlord trait when there are even basic Warlord traits in the book that you would rather take in its place? I would argue the point. Now, the last Warlord trait is the Forgotten Sons. It's a traitor-only Warlord trait and is dumb. And it's dumb because it only works if you ally in allied Sons of Horus units. And if you can draw a line of sight, and it's actually really weirdly worded. I think it works either way, but it says if the Sons of Horus can draw a line of sight to your Warlord, then your Warlord and his unit ignores morale tests. So it's like it's a fetish, they need to be watched by the Sons of Horus, I guess. And they may make use of the Sons of Horus Death Dealer's advanced reaction one time, as if they were Sons of Horus themselves. Of course, they only get their normal Legion trait as a buff. They don't get any Sons of Horus Legion trait to advance the Death Dealer's reaction. It's a one-use warlord trait. And it's trader only, and it requires you must take an allied detachment. There are so many things about this that, on the one hand, it seems fluffy, but wouldn't it be more fluffy to just be a traitor-only warlord trait? We can take any traitor allegiance ally. You know, Thousand Sons, what a fantastic choice that would be for an allied force for the White Scars. No, Sons of Horus, talk no more. So, a bit of a shame, but not a great warlord trait. In fact, quite bad, in my opinion. Then we get to the Rites of War. So, Chagorian Brotherhood is a mere pale shadow of what it was in the previous edition, at best. So, Outrisers Sky Hunters become line troops. Well, they did in the previous edition. They also become elites, if you like. Sure, nobody really cares. I suppose it allows you to take... it allows you to take more models in fast attack, like, say, speeders, for example, but... yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of points to waste. Infantry that don't have a vehicle must start the game in reserves, but they do gain the outflank special rule, and you can't take any heavy support or fortifications, and that is the nail in the coffin. You need heavy support. Someone who wrote these rules has a hatred of bikes and jet bikes, I think, because they didn't write them very well in this edition, and they don't have the hitting power. Yes, they've got 2 wounds, but look at the other units that have 2 wounds. Terminators. 2 wounds, 2+ saves. They also have the bulky special rule. They are relentless by default, of course, but so are bikes. You also have, say, Cataphracti Terminators. They have the heavy rule. So not only are they very hard to kill already, being 2+, 4+ invulnerables, but they also have the fact that when they do take wounds from blast or template weapons, they get to reroll their armor saves. 2+ rerollable is, well, I don't need to tell you, very hard to fail. It's 1 in 36 chance. So that means for every 36 wounds you land on a model, 1 is getting through. Pretty damn good. Now, compare that to a bike. 3+ armor save, toughness 4. In a world full of strength 8 AP 3. Yes, you can... run with bikes and gain a shrouded. Yeah, but you're sacrificing the firepower output of the unit. If you're sacrificing the firepower output, how can the unit make up for a heavy support choice? It cannot. So, it sucks. Yes, restrict the heavy support choices by all means, but there are heavy support choices which are fluffy or thematic, which would suit them. So not being able to take them is just, well, it's kind of a kick in the teeth. Obviously the fortifications, sure, don't take fortifications, who cares? But the Chagorian Brotherhood, it really relies on you allying in another detachment in order to actually make the most out of it. Because the other detachment can actually bring, heavy support choices that you otherwise lack. It is not good. It's not good Rite of War. It needs to give more buffs or advantages to Outriders and Sky Hunters because they are too expensive and too fragile to replace tactical squads. They just don't work well as line troops in this edition. Now, the second Rite of War is really thematic, but not very good. The Evankashig become troops in the Sagimasana Rite of War. Infantry may take the Karash special rule and get Feel No Pain 5+. So Karash is in the Evankashig section. It means that if the unit is killed, they never generate a VP for the enemy that killed them. So if you're playing a kill points mission or something like that, then it's like, oh yeah, don't care that you killed me. It also means that you can only be joined by models which have this special rule. So you have to give it to your HQ units if you want them to join other units in the army that have this special rule. And it also means that if you do that, then they cannot join a unit that doesn't have this special rule in your army. So you may as well just take it and gain Feel No Pain 5+ across the board. Karash models are also fearless on the turn in which they charge. This is good. However, the Sagimasana Rite of War gives 0 buffs or advantages to the army that actually are going to help them win close combats. They are a bit more tanky in close combat thanks to Feel No Pain 5+, but it is not going to save you from a brutal Thunderhammer to the face. Because, strength 8, toughness 4, do the math. Now, if they had additional attacks on the charge, if they had furious charge, things like that, then we'd be in a different situation. But as it stands, it is a painful Rite of War, and it's made worse because you can't take any reserves. So that means nothing deploying off the table. It also means that you can't take units like drop pods, flyers, that kind of thing. That's problematic. That's very problematic. You can only take infantry and heavy supports. You don't even get tanks to put on the battlefield unless they're dedicated transports for your squads. And you can't take a Primarch or fortifications, which, that's fine, I suppose. Although, ironically here, I think fortifications is something that would suit the Sagimasana, because the Sagimasana like to lay ambushes and traps. And fortifications do actually tie in with this. If you lay down fortifications, expecting an enemy to advance into an area and not realize you have fortifications there, you have the advantage. Very Sagimasana tactic. However, disallowed. So, yeah, it's a rite of war that encourages you to run into close combat, and you're going to get cut down in close combat. So why would I rate this rite of war? Overall, really starting to suffer as a legion here. Right down in the bottom 3. Then we get to unique war gear. Now, first up, the Shamshir jet bike. It's a jet bike. It grants a 2+ armor save to the models that take it, which is going to be independent characters. It also has a scatterbolt launcher, which is the weapon it had in the previous edition. It's basically a heavy flame of stats, but it has pinning and shred. It's not a bad weapon, and if you can get enough Shamshirs together, it can put out a lot of punishment. The fact that the jet bike actually has a 2+ save almost makes it as good as the previous edition. But the fact is, the models that are going to be taking this jet bike all have artificer armor anyway, so it doesn't matter that it grants a 2+ armor save. A regular jet bike will to those models. So you're taking it for the weapon if you prefer this weapon over the other regular jet bike weapon. You can also take a White Scars Power Glaive on any character in the army. So the Power Glaive, interestingly, is terrible compared to last edition. It's Strength +1, it's AP 3, Melee Breaching 5+. Well, a Power Sword is essentially these stats, and a Power Sword is at least rending. Breaching is poor man's rending, and yeah, it's on a 5+, I guess, but, I don't know. For a 5-point upgrade over a power weapon, is that worth it? I would say a hard no. If it was just flat 5 points, sure, but you're talking, 15 to 20 points on most models for that stat line? I would rather a Thunderhammer. Next item of war gear is the Cyberhawk. It's 10 points. It targets an enemy unit that's within 24 inches. You pick one, you declare that's the Cyberhawk target. All shooting against that unit rerolls their to hits for 1, and you get to add 1 inch to your charge rolls when you attack said unit. It's, again, a pale imitation of the previous edition. In the previous edition, you put the Cyberhawk down at the start of each turn, had a 6-inch aura around it that you got these exact same bonuses, but it was against all units within that aura. Instead, you have to declare a single unit that affects. Was the Cyberhawk so overpowered that they had to get rid of the previous edition's rules? I would argue no. Then we get to their unique console, the Stormseer. So yet another legion that's not the Thousand Suns getting a psychic console. Great. Now, at least the White Scars deserve one, so I can't be bitter about it, and I'm a big White Scars fanboy. But I still find it very ironic that this is 2 legions in a row we've just done who have a psychic console. I think it's the 3rd legion so far that we've covered that has a psychic console. And so the Thousand Suns not having one, it's just wow, they really don't know how to write psychers and hate Thousand Suns. That's all I've gotten from Forge World. So, 45-point upgrade, you get Psyker, you get Adamantium Will 4+, Force Weapon is an option, Psychic Hood is an option for 15 points. Now, you have an ability called the Unseen Bolt. It's a shooting type psychic power, 72 inches range, strength 4, AP 4, shock pulse, force, barrage, and large blast. It sounds really strong on the surface because large blast, shock pulse. But you need the force power to go off on it to get it to increase in strength so it can actually penetrate a vehicle, which is where you want shock pulse to be applied. And good luck doing anything to those vehicles with AP4. Best case, most tanks you're seeing on the battlefield are armor 13, armor 14. With strength maximum 8. I think Force is currently doubles strength. That is not going to do jack against them. It's a 1 in 6 chance, and you're more likely to actually fry the Psyker attempting it than to pull this off. And of course, being Barrage, Large Blast, AP4, this power, or a power like this, I could see working well against something like, I don't know, Solar Auxilia, or Imperial Militia, something with a horde of low armor save units. Okay, then in that case, the Unseen Bolt's going to be good. Unfortunately, the game does not include those units currently, and we have to stack this up against other legions and other psychic powers, especially from the main rulebook. And it doesn't really stack up well. It looks good on the surface. Everyone gets units that have Shock Pulse special rule, like Saber tanks, and they go, oh my god, that's amazing. And then you actually do the maths of what the chances of it affecting an enemy are, and it's terrible. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, or people kind of like a game, like, oh, I got Shock Pulse off 8 times in the game on a Spartan tank. So good for you, buddy. You are the exception. Anyway, the other power is the Call of the Wind. It grants Fleet of 2, or if you take Psychic Test, Fleet of 4, and affects all friendly units within 6 inches. It's kind of neat. Not game-breaking, but again, do you want to spend 45 points to upgrade to this console? I would say no. But it is thematic, and I do love a good theme, so if I was making a White Scars list right now, I'd probably make a Sagimasana list that's terrible, led by a bunch of Stormseers that are terrible. Because, I don't know, I'm an idiot, a glutton for punishment, who knows? Then we get into the Legion Elite units. We have 3 to pick from with the White Scars, the Golden Kashig, the Evankashig, and the Kisagan Landspeeder. The Golden Kashig are solid as a rock. 140 points, you're getting a Weapon Skill 5 jet bike, has a 2+ armor save, and funny enough, already has Artificer armor, so it doesn't matter that they've got a jet bike which grants a 2+ armor save. Like I said before, it's a funny option. Now, it's a Shamshir jet bike, so up close, these guys are going to hit like a freight train with just the sheer amount of shredding Strength 5 template attacks. Of course, that's not going to hurt Terminators. Therefore, you want to hit them with your Kontos Power Lance. Now, the Kontos Power Lance, it's a bit different to last edition. Now, it's gone from Strength 7 to Strength 10. It is AP 1, melee, only ever gets 1 attack. Well, actually, it only gets your model's base attacks, which is interesting, because it means the champion in the unit is going to get 2 attacks with it. It's a lance weapon, so armor is going to drop down to 12 on tanks and vehicles that it hits. Sudden strike of 4, so you are getting very fast with this thing, but not instant hitting like you did in the previous edition. And 2-handed, which won't affect anything for the models that are using it. So, the Kontos Power Lance, at Brutal 3, Strength 10, these guys can rip and tear, as it were. They could take down a Dreadnought comfortably on the charge, because they're going to hit it on 4s, they're going to wound it on 2s, it's going to save maybe 1 in 3, if it's lucky, of the wounds that hit it, and being Brutal 3, an awful lot of wounds are going to hit it. These guys are Dreadnought killers, and this Legion, the Golden Kashig, only toughness 4. If you can get that toughness up somehow, or buff the toughness, get invulse saves on the squad, things like Telekine Domes, this squad becomes awesome. And you could spam Golden Kashig just with the intent of hunting down enemy Dreadnoughts. I think they're an absolutely fantastic unit, and when you combine hitting like a freight train, they will instant kill Terminators left and right, and you can hit and run. Hit and run, you've got Hammer of Wrath, go in, hit them with your lances, and then get the hell out of there. Why would anyone upgrade to a Thunderhammer on this squad? Only if you're sticking around and you're not going to hit and run, but why would you want to put yourself in a situation where you're doing Brutal 2 attacks against someone at Strength 8 when you could be doing Brutal 3 Strength 10 attacks? That's so much better. So, Golden Kashig, they're one of my favourite Legion units. They were in the last edition, and they are again in this edition. But damn, they hurt from not having Toughness 5. And at 40 points each, you're paying 5 points more than a Legion Terminator. That's done. Done. Then we get to the Evankashig, who are a pale shadow of what they were in the previous edition. They are regular Terminator stat line. with an extra attack. Well, okay. I was going to say that's it, but there's a little bit more to it. They are stubborn, they have that Crash special rule, and they have Feel No Pain 5+. So they'll never get kill points for... the enemy will never get kill points for killing your Evankashig. Fine. But the problem with your Evankashig is they're armed with glaives. Now, you can upgrade away from the glaives to Combi Bolter and Power Weapon for 5 points each, or Combi Bolter and Power Fist for 15 points each. No Thunderhammer option, even though Thunderhammer Storm Shield was actually an option for Sagimasana in the novels. I just want to point that one out. But that makes it an extra 15 points per model. That would take you to 55 points per model for a Tartarus Terminator. At Weapon Skill 4. That's a rookie move. So you're paying 10 points more than a regular Legion Terminator to gain 1 attack. Crash, which is a negative in most circumstances. Stubborn, and Feel No Pain inbuilt. It is cheaper to add a apothecary, I almost said a librarian, add an apothecary to a unit of Terminators than it is to just have a unit of 10 of these guys. It is more points in here. And of course the glaive. The glaive is kind of a terrible option for them. Strength +1, AP3. Alright, Strength 5, AP3 attacks with Breaching 5+. You're going to get a fair few attacks, but last edition they could take on enemy elite Terminators hand to hand. Now, their weapons are a little bit better than Power Swords. Basically on par with Power Swords, in fact. Strength +1 is just... It's not even the Strength +1. Just make them AP2, like they were in the last edition. Were they that critically overpowered last time? I don't think they were. But yeah, they will just die in droves against enemy Terminators, and at the points they cost, honestly, just save 5 points a model, get regular Tartarus Terminators and give them power glaives. They will do just as good a job. How keep Power Swords on them. Tartarus Terminators with Power Swords will be just as good at killing enemy infantry as these guys will be. Because that's all they're good for. You would never in your life attempt to throw these at another Terminator unit. Even Death Shroud will beat them in a fight, and Death Shroud are not designed for fighting other Terminators either. Evankashig are one of the worst units in 2.0 in an Elite Legion unit slot. If they were 10 points cheaper, I would change my opinion on that, because they would have a niche to fill, and as it stands, they have no niche to fill, and they ruin them in this edition. Lastly, of course, we get to the Kisagan Assault Speeder, and it suffers from the same problems that all speeders do. It's not bulky. You are outnumbered by a single model with a jump pack. And that means things that work off those kind of rules are going to have a huge impact on you. Oh, we outnumber you, we get bonuses onto wounds and yada yada. That sucks. Also, because of the way they wrote these, it's a 2-crew vehicle, so it has 2 attacks. But it's armed with a single bolt pistol and a single chainsword. So it has 3 attacks in close combat. For 2 models attacking with chainsword and bolt pistol, because that's how they wrote the rules. And they did this on all speeders, because I don't think until the very last minute of writing these rules they were going to make speeders into models with wounds, because they didn't put the time and effort into writing them that they did into making dreadnoughts have wounds, which I still think were done very late minute in 2.0. Now, because of this, the unit is, well, it kind of suffers in the close combat category, and of course, only strength 4, only ballistic skill 4 now. It used to be ballistic skill 5, essentially, because you had strafing run in the last edition. Firing protocols 4, fine. You can shoot a bolt pistol on top of its normal weapons, whoop-de-doo. Deep strike, well, one of your rights of war won't even let you do that, because that's a reserve roll. It is relentless, sure, but it's heavy. And this is one of those funny things in 2.0 that, again, Javelins suffer from, because this is a Javelin variant. You have a speeder here, which is actually slower than the Saber, a tracked vehicle. It makes no logical sense. It's kind of like in previous editions where flyers, it's a zooming flyer, it moves so fast, it's supersonic, you can only hit it on 6s with your shooting, and it moves 18 inches. And you're like, but I moved that bike squad 24 inches. Oh, well, hit them on 2s, sorry buddy. They're not speeding enough. They're going faster, 30% faster than that fighter jet there, but the fighter jet is just harder to hit. You know, it's one of these rules that was written and doesn't make sense to you logically, and you sit there going, how did the rules writers come to this conclusion? That's speeders in a nutshell. It does have Legiones Astartes White Scars, so it is going to move a little bit faster, and it has the same war gear as last edition. Kiri's Assault Cannon and 2 Reaper Autocannon. Well, the Reapers are better than last edition now because, well, they're getting rerolls to hit on Ballistic Skill 4. Well, that means a lot more than rerolls to hit on Ballistic Skill 5. Whereas the Assault Cannon is now a lot worse because it's, well, Ballistic Skill 4. So instead of hitting on 2s, you hit on 3s. So it means instead of usually 5 of your shots landing, only 4 of your shots land. So the killing power has gone down the unit, but I noticed the points did not. So it got easier to kill, and the points basically went up. Speeders aren't good in this edition, and the Kisagan is the best of the worst in this regard. It is the best, yes, but you're paying 105 points for it, when you could get a Saber tank, which frankly hits harder now. It's still not a great unit. And is probably, funny enough, more survivable than this because, well, just bolt gun fire can take this down. Toughness 7 and 4 wounds. That's a Castellax in the previous edition. Castellax die all the time to basic things, and this doesn't even have the benefit of having an adamantic reactor to get some sort of invulnerable save. And like I said, outnumbered in close combat, low numbers of attacks, yada yada. No, just don't play it, guys. And there's no turbo boosting or flat outing, so you're not getting shrouded or anything like that on it. It is really going to hurt if you take these things. They are just going to die, and snipers especially. Nobody thought about the impact of Nemesis bolt guns against units like this, because I guess you could say, I don't know, they sniped the crew out of the vehicle, sure. But yeah, sniping these is very real. 5s to wound always gets through, no armor saves for the unit. How quickly do you think that even 5 recon marines will take down a Kisagan assault speeder? It's incredibly quickly. And of course, because you can take them in a squadron, it's still called a squadron even though it would just be a unit, a cavalry unit, you can essentially, you've only got to get through 12 wounds to kill them all. And they still suffer from things like morale. They don't have stubborn or anything like that, or fearless, so they've gone from vehicles that were completely immune to morale to, oh, you killed one of the Kisagan land speeders, or you did a wound on one, now we have to take a pinning check on the squad. Like, it just, none of it makes sense. Again, badly written because nobody thought about speeders in this edition. They just said, let's give them wounds, it'll be fine. Spoiler alert, it was not fine. Anyway, the White Scars Legion overall. We are now at the end of the episode, and this is where I give my rating. My rating is 3rd worst Legion. They are possibly in the running for being worse than the Raven Guard, but I do think that movement value, and having had a chance to play with them a little bit, if used very wisely, is incredibly strong, and it is always there, it doesn't go away, whereas the Raven Guard, once you've used your Infiltrate at the start of the game, it's done. Okay, and a lot of the Raven Guard's rules only affect certain models in the army, whereas the +1 movement is army-wide. It's always going to be there. And you have one of the strongest warlord traits in the game. The ability to get Fearless on a lot of your units will make up for a lot of the weakness that you may have versus other units. It turns you into essentially immovable objects, which is kind of funny when you consider how fast the White Scars are. It would have also been great to see a slight modification of the Legion rules, maybe giving additional movement to units other than infantry, so say bikes, or vehicles, getting +2 inches instead of +1 inches, but it is what it is. On your vehicles, it does increase their threat range as well, because if you're sitting outside of another vehicle's main weapon firing range by that 1 inch, it does mean that if you move forward with your vehicle, you're able to move that extra inch without taking a penalty on your shooting. That's huge. Anyway, that's it for me, Mac with the Outer Circle. Hope you all enjoyed the episode. I hope I've explained some of the problems, especially with speeders and bikes, that are something you really need to take into account with this army. See you all on the next episode.